A New Zealand car crash claims the lives of 2 Hong Kongers. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will make a decision on arms sales to Taiwan. And Russia's President Putin will visit China next week. Good evening and thank you for joining us. A car crash in New Zealand has killed 2 Hong Kong tourists and injured 2 others. A local tour guide reminds that heavy fog is common in the area, urging caution while driving. Limong Sangai reports.
The accident was a 3-car crash. New Zealand police says the fatal accident happened at an intersection in So-Win district on the country's South Island on Friday afternoon. 2 Hong Kongers were pronounced dead at the scene, while another 2 had injuries. The Chinese Consulate General in Christchurch has activated an emergency response mechanism to offer consular assistance to the injured and their families. Meanwhile, the Immigration Department says it's providing help to the affected residents' families. Similar traffic accidents often occur in New Zealand. Despite South Island's beautiful natural landscapes, a tour guide says tourists should be extra cautious when driving in the region because of its changing weather, which has become rainy and foggy. He says such weather conditions can reduce road visibility for drivers. The Chinese Consulate General also reminds visitors to be careful if they drive themselves in the area. Moments 9, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he had a great stay during his Beijing visit and calls his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping a very historic couple of days. En route to Washington, he says promises have been made for the purchases of Boeing planes and reiterates his stance on Iran, Taiwan, and jailed Hong Kong former media tycoon Jimmy Lai. Gloria Feng has more.
Heading home to Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump calls his 3-day trip to Beijing, where he had several meetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping, a great success. On Air Force One, he speaks with reporters about the conversations he shared with Xi. Among the trade deals that Trump says were discussed include Boeing plane purchases.
Got along, made a lot of great trade deals, including over 200 planes for Boeing with a promise of 750 planes, which will be by far the largest order ever if they do a good job with the 200, which I'm sure they will.
He says the 2 touched on Iran and the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, but he's not asking for any favors because the U.S. does not need favors. Trump then goes on to say he'll be making decisions on arms sales to Taiwan, but contends the last thing we need right now is a war that's 9,500 miles away. As to whether the U.S. will defend Taiwan, he had this to say.
I don't want to say it. I'm not going to say that. There's only one person that knows that. You know who it is? Me. I'm the only person. That question was asked to me today by President Xi. I said, I don't talk about that.
At a Chinese Foreign Ministry briefing following Trump's visit Friday, spokesperson Guo Jiakun said both sides should jointly implement the important consensus reached by the 2 heads of state and inject more stability into China-U.S. economic and trade cooperation and the world economy. Gloria Feng, TVB News.
With U.S. President Donald Trump having concluded his visit to China after meeting President Xi Jinping, former Chinese ambassador to the U.S. Cui Tiankai says the 2 heads of state reached a consensus on building a new positioning of constructive, strategic, and stable relations between the 2 countries.
The Xi-Trump meeting reached a series of consensuses, including agreeing to build a constructive, strategic, and stable relationship between China and the United States. In an interview with state media CCTV, Cui Tiankai, former Chinese ambassador to the United States, says after several years of exchanges and confrontations between the 2 sides, the consensus is now more focused on the need for stability. He says over the past 2 years, Americans, including government officials and those from the business community and the academia, have stressed the need for stable Sino-US relations. Cui says during such meetings, it is rare to introduce the visiting business leaders during the talks, which shows that the 2 heads of state attach great importance to underscore bilateral trade relations. Cui says they pursue a form of dynamic stability, promoting Sino-US relations while continuously expanding cooperation, solving problems and removing obstacles. A People's Daily commentary says that the 47-year development of diplomatic relations between China and the United States has repeatedly shown that the two countries should be partners rather than adversaries. The commentary says competition is inevitable between two great powers, but the contest is by no means a zero-sum game and is more akin to a track and field race that motivates each other to improve together. China is happy to see a confident, open, and prosperous United States, and also expects the U.S. to look at China's development rationally.
Chinese President Xi Jinping invites Russian President Vladimir Putin to visit China from May 19th to 20th. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson announces today. President Putin hopes to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's recent visit to China with President Xi during the Russian leader's own visit there, the Kremlin said on Friday. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Putin and Xi would focus on bilateral ties amid solid trade volumes, but also discuss international matters. Putin will also be meeting with Chinese Premier Li Qiang. Putin's last trip to China was August last year, where he visited Tianjin and then Beijing, where he attended the military parade marking the 80th anniversary of the victory in the war of resistance against Japanese aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country must respond to Russian strikes in a just and tangible way. This following an attack on Kyiv, Ukrainian Air Force says was Russia's biggest barrage on the country of the full-scale invasion. Mourners gathered by the rubble of a Kyiv apartment building a Russian missile attack had flattened on Thursday, killing 24 people. A group of foreign diplomats also invited the scene of the attack and laid flowers in tribute to the victims. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will retaliate, and there have been strikes hitting, in particular, Russian oil facilities and military sites since Friday night. And still ahead, Israel and Lebanon extend ceasefire after meeting in Washington. Longer visiting hours to roll out for all public hospitals. And Ocean Park's Water World reopens, but future under a cloud. Welcome back. Israel and Lebanon have agreed to a 45-day extension of their ceasefire that took effect last month, a spokesman for the U.S. State Department says. The ceasefire was set to expire Sunday. This was agreed in a third round of direct talks between Israel and Lebanon that continued in Washington Friday. Discussions tackled thorny issues including the withdrawal of Israeli troops from southern Lebanon and the disarmament of Hezbollah. Tracy Furness has more.
Israeli ambassador to the US, Yair Lapid, walking into the State Department, while the Lebanese delegation wait in vehicles outside. US officials say Israel and Lebanon agreed to a 45-day extension of ceasefire. It comes after 2 productive days of talks in Washington, but the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah is still ongoing.
What we have here after 2 days of talks between Israel and Lebanon is an extension of the ceasefire that was supposed to expire on Sunday. It's been extended by 45 days. But the big caveat here is that fighting between Israel and Hezbollah, which is not a part of these talks, and says that it is not bound by any agreements reached during them, is still fighting. There is still fighting going on. So even though this ceasefire the extension has been agreed to, and that's good news and will lead to further discussions on a broader peace deal between Israel and Lebanon, the impact that it will have, the extension will have on the ground, is really unknown and uncertain.
People in Beirut expressed divided views on the new round of talks between Israel and Lebanon as the country faces ongoing tensions along its southern border. This local Beirut resident says there is hope, but there are conditions for that hope to be realized. The hope is for Hezbollah's weapons to be handed over to the state so that the state can regain full sovereignty and independence over its territory like any normal country in the world. This displaced woman from Baalbek says Israel has never to this day set a humanitarian example or acted with humanity. No one should expect to live comfortably with Israel. Israel and Lebanon will resume political negotiations at the US State Department on June 2nd and 3rd, while their military delegates are set to launch parallel security talks at the Pentagon on May 29th. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The U.S. Pentagon halts the deployment of 4,000 U.S. base troops to Poland. The decision to pause comes 2 weeks after the Pentagon announced it was withdrawing 5,000 troops from NATO ally Germany, in part due to a widening rift over the Iran war between Trump and Europe. The Polish military says there is no change in security guarantees as the U.S. moves to halt deployment in a move to cut troops in Europe. Gloria Feng has more.
The Pentagon is scraping deployment of U.S.-based troops from the Army's 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team 1st Cavalry Division. This following confirmation from General Christopher Leneve, the Army's acting chief of staff, during testimony on Friday before the House Armed Services Committee. The U.S. is reportedly looking to scale back their presence in Europe and is halting the deployment instead of taking out forces already on the ground in Europe. Republicans and Democrats on the committee are criticizing the move and says Congress did not notify or consult them. Top Democrat Adam Smith notes the Army had already sent an advance team of soldiers to Poland to prepare for the deployment, and equipment was already being shipped when Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's orders came down. Poland's Defense Minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, says he's been reassured by the Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Forces, General Alexis Gringovic, in Europe that there will be no change in security guarantees and measures. We have assurances that President Trump's decision to withdraw troops from Germany will not negatively impact Poland. Planning is now underway to determine how to do this, he says. This is the second time in 2 weeks the U.S. is pulling troops from Europe after withdrawing 5,000 soldiers from Germany. Gloria Feng, TVB News.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is expected to approve an increase of £18 billion in defence spending as he faces a battle for political survival, The Times has reported. The government is still finalising a defence spending plan and will publish it as soon as possible, a spokesperson says. The British government's defence investment plan will aim to deliver equipment and technology to frontline forces quickly while supporting economic growth. Starmer is struggling to hold on to power after a tumultuous week when one of his main rivals in government quit, accusing him of a lack of vision, and others positioned themselves for potential challenges to his leadership. A Thailand train crashed into a public bus on Saturday, killing at least 8 people. It happened late afternoon near an airport rail link station in Bangkok. More than 20 people are said to have been injured. A cargo train struck a bus and the impact dragged several other vehicles along the tracks before the bus was engulfed in flames. Rescue crews are still at the scene of the deadly collision. Back locally, the hospital authority says it will extend visiting hours at all public hospitals by the end of July. Longer visiting hours help patients recover and can strengthen doctor-patient relationships, HA officials say. Mimo Sangai reports.
Hospitals in the HA's Kowloon Central and New Territories West Cluster are the first to implement the new visiting arrangements, which have been in place for about 2 weeks. Visiting hours in non-acute wards, such as rehabilitation and nursing care wards, have been extended from 5 to 6 hours per day to at least 9 hours. Pediatric wards allow 24-hour visiting. All public hospitals will implement new visiting hours in by the end of July. The HA says the extended visiting hours allow family members to stay longer in in the wards, which can soothe patients' emotions, help the recovery process, and strengthen doctor-patient relationships. Speaking on a radio program, Dr. Ada Yu, chief executive of Shatin Hospital, says a consultant doctor shared with her that the extension is good, as patients can greet family members and have the opportunity to update them on their condition. However, some frontline staff are concerned the new arrangement will affect their work. Mr. Fong, a ward assistant, says when family members visit, patients ask staff questions which takes up manpower, hence there may not be enough time to do the daily work. Danny Tong, chief nurse executive of the HA, says when a new policy or arrangement is introduced, the first priority is to maintain close communication with frontline staff. If some work arrangements require flexible adjustments, then adjustments can be made. Meanwhile, the public healthcare fee reform will be implemented from New Year's Day. Secretary for Health Lo Chongmao, who attended a health economic conference on Saturday morning, said that Hong Kong's public healthcare expenditure has doubled to 250 billion over the past decade, necessitating reform.
We are facing the problem of a very high cost, a rapidly growing cost. In fact, over the last decade, our recurrent health expenditure has nearly doubled. These warnings call for our Health Bureau to deepen our reform to enhance the overall resilience and sustainability of our healthcare system.
Lo says keeping the sustainability of the healthcare system fits the country's 15th five-year plan, which aims to build a healthy China. Mucions 9, TVB News.
The Hong Kong International Airport's Terminal 2 will begin operations at the end of this month, with the Airport Authority having completed the terminal's operational test recently. After visiting the terminal, Secretary for Transport and Logistics Mabel Chan says she is impressed with the self-service and tech facilities of the new building.
The $12.9 billion redevelopment project for the Hong Kong International Airport's Terminal 2 will officially enter service on May 27th. The Airport Authority recently arranged a full-scale simulation involving more than 1,000 participants. They include staff from local airlines and ground handling service providers to test the entire departure process for passengers in Terminal 2. Secretary for Transport and Logistics Mabel Chan and the Airport Authority's Executive Director for Airport Operations Stephen Yu inspected the terminal. In the Transport Chief's blog post, she writes the passenger flow throughout the departure process is smooth, noting the terminal features 20 self-service security gates and 12 assisted links. Within the restricted area, there are 15 smart security screening links, equipped with the latest 3D and 360-degree computed tomography X-ray tech, designed to minimize passenger screening time. Chan also highlights upgrades made to restroom facilities in Terminal 2, which are larger than those in Terminal 1, following in-depth analysis of passengers' usage habits. She adds that supporting transport infrastructure is already in place. Car Park Number 3 is open for public use, and the departure level drop-off area will open this month in phases. The Airport Express will serve both terminals starting Wednesday. Terminal 2 can handle about 8 million departing passengers every year to help ease passenger flows at Terminal 1.
Today is the first day of the reopening of Ocean Park's Water World this year, drawing crowds eager to take a dip and soak up some summer fun. Mucions reports.
Despite the cloudy weather, a long queue of visitors waited outside the gates of Water World on Saturday morning. To welcome the first batch of visitors on its reopening day, the theme park organizes a music performance. Many of them are students who came with friends to spend the day. One decides to celebrate his birthday at the Water Amusement Park.
It's definitely one of the better water parks that I've been to, good quality, and it's an overall great experience, I'd say.
In the financial year of 2024-25, the Water World recorded $148.3 million of deficit, a 20% decrease compared to the previous fiscal year. But because of a continuous operational deficit, Ocean Park's chairman Paulo Pong says they might not rule out the possibility of closing down the facility. Some visitors do not support the idea.
And maybe we should at least let some people try it out and maybe think like I think that they're going to think it's going to be fun and come back. Because honestly, well, if it wasn't fun for me, I wouldn't be here. Maybe post things more often on social media, saying like they have new things like slides or any food or events, and that might attract people.
Opened in 2021, Ocean Park's Waterworld had planned to operate all year round, but to cut costs, the facility was closed in the past 2 winters. Memos 9, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.